Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to class tonight. We are so excited to have everybody here. This is going to be a super amazing event. We are so glad that you guys are all here to join us for this. This is the day in the life of a young living farm. And like I said, we are so glad you're here. We would love for you to all to introduce yourself in the chat. If you haven't done that already, you can type in your name, where you live, and that'll just help us to all see who is on here. And with that, I do want to say, whereas you're putting in those locations, we're going to be looking at those, because what we'd really like to do is just to rent a big airplane and fly around and pick all of you up at those locations and take you, swoop you away to a young living farm where you can actually experience all this for yourself. Well, we probably aren't going to make that happen tonight. So the next best thing that we're going to have to settle for is to go on this virtual tour with us tonight as we take a deep look at the Young Living Farm in St. Mary's, Idaho. But the first thing you need to know, if we were to take you there and you were to experience it for yourself, the first thing you need to know about visiting a Young Living Farm is that it is just a sensory feast to be at a farm. Like, the moment you step foot on the farm, what you will notice is just the incredible beauty of the landscape and the plants, and that you'll notice just the amazing textures of the plants as you walk down the rows and feel the plants. You'll notice the sounds of equipment running, the sounds of leaves being crushed under your feet, and you might even taste some of the plants growing in the field. But of course, the biggest thing you'll notice, the biggest sense of all that just overwhelms you when you're at the farm, is the smells, right? Because all these plants growing, plants being distilled, that sensory overload of all those smells is just an amazing part. And so as we try and make this sensory and experiential for all you tonight, what I really want you to do is make sure you have some oils with you. And as we talk about some of these different oils, you can then put those on and experience it. It's the next best thing to being there at the farm. So grab some oils. If you got to get up and move away from the screen for a little bit and come back, that's okay. We'll still be here when you get back. But grab some oils, make sure you have some nearby. I would especially recommend that you have lavender nearby. And if you have Melissa is one we're going to be talking about a lot about tonight, because that's what they were distilling last week. Make sure that you have some Melissa on hand as well. In fact, because we are going to be talking about Melissa quite a bit, would love to know by, again, posting in the chat. This is going to be our main way to interact with everybody tonight, because we got so many people on here. We want to know, drop a comment in the chat if you've had the chance to experience Melissa oil, right? This is one of those rare oils that not everybody has had a chance to get their hands on. So tell us if you've experienced Melissa, and if so, what's the first word that comes to your mind when you smell Melissa? So that way, those people who haven't experienced it yet get a chance to see, to at least read your description of it, and hopefully that'll help paint a picture in their mind of what Melissa is like. So grab your oils and then put in the chat there what your one word that comes to mind when you experience Melissa. So with that, for introductions, I've had all of you introduce yourself in the chat. I'm going to do the same here. My name is Brian McKenna, and even though I didn't travel to the farm last week, I get to be one of your tour guides on today's virtual visit to the farm. You may be wondering how I earned that spot. Well, that's simply because I'm married to the amazing Jodi McKenna, and I just happen to be organized. So those two qualifications are all it took for me to earn this spot as one of your tour guides here today. So happy to be here. But I really want to introduce you to the real tour guides on this amazing experience we're going on tonight. And that is all of the Diamond ladies that traveled last week to the St. Mary's farm and got to participate in distilling Melissa last week. So while you are all maybe still grabbing your oils and typing in the chat about your experience with Melissa, I'm going to open it up to the rest of our tour guides now for them to quickly introduce themselves and tell you their name, where they live, and just a little brief snippet about themselves and their family, but as we get going here. So Jodi, why don't we start with you?
Hey everyone, like Brian said, I am Jodi, his wife, and we've been using oils for about 16 years now, and we have 4 kids. We homeschool. We most recently acquired some goats, ducks, and chickens, and so we use oils on all of those fun animals and in our big old lasagna garden that we started, not because we're actually growing lasagna, but this type of gardening. And I was so excited because for me, I actually found out on a Monday about this trip, and I left on a Wednesday. So it was a little bit of a whirlwind, but well worth it. And I'm really, really excited for you guys to meet some of the other gals, and really Guy Richard, he's not on the call tonight, who went on the trip too, just because they are spectacular humans if you haven't met them yet.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And let's go to Kara next.
Hi there, I'm Kara Cozier, and I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. I have twin daughters who are 13 years old, and we also homeschool. We absolutely love it here in South Carolina, and I am so excited for you to hear all about the farm tonight. I just had such an amazing experience, and I know that you are just going to be so inspired after you hear about how much we loved everything that we did together. These ladies are absolutely amazing, and it inspired me so much. So,
Awesome. Thank you, Kara. And we're going to Yvonne next. And I'm going in no particular order here. I'm going in according to who I see on my screen. And I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anybody. But Yvonne, you're up next.
Hey everyone, my name is Yvonne Litza. I've been with Young Living for about 20 years. I live in Crete, Illinois, and this past few days at the farm was it was really life-changing. I'm really excited about tonight. My husband and I live on a small farm, so I love the outdoors. We have horses and chickens and dogs and cats. We used to have cows, and so we get to use these products on all of God's creatures. And so being able to go to a farm that Young Living has is just especially special for that reason. So I can't wait to see and hear what everybody says tonight.
Awesome. All right. Wendy, you're up next.
Okay, I muted myself. All right. So hi, I am Wendy, and I live in Washington State with my 3 little boys and my fat little Shih Tzus. We recently moved, well, not recently, 3 years ago, we moved from Florida. And I don't know why we left Florida, but I love the fact that we are a few hours away. We're talking like 4 and some change from St. Mary's and Highland Flats, because it is such an honor and it's such an experience to be able to go to the farm and you feel the heart and soul of Young Living. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But that's probably my favorite thing about Washington. I can drive to the farms.
Awesome. All right. Next, we're going to Anna after that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for coming. My name is Ana Karina. I am originally from Monterrey, Mexico, and my family and I, we live in Holly Springs, North Carolina. I've been in Young Living for a little bit over 6 years now, and this trip, just like Jodi said, was unexpected for me, but I made it work because you have to say yes and figure it out later, and you have to say yes to adventure and say yes to life, because you need to make life happen to you instead of waiting for life to happen to you. And that's the way I live, and that's the way I've achieved so many things. So I encourage you guys to do the same, because that's how you get this type of adventure. So thank you for having me.
All right. Good words to live by. Lori, you're up next.
Hey, everybody. I'm Lori Borre, and I'm over the moon to be here. This invitation was quite a surprise to me, and I confess that I was a little hesitant just because I didn't want to get on an airplane these days. But I live in Jamestown, Indiana, with 6 children, and I thought, you know what? Just like Anna said, say yes now and figure it out later. And I thought I was going to, serve and that sort of thing. And what I found, and to get around the neatest people on the planet, just the most incredible people on the planet. But what I didn't realize was how much that farm was going to affect me and how much I was going to come home with. So I'm just crazy grateful to be here.
All right. We're crazy grateful to have you. And Erin is up next.
Hey, y'all. Gosh, this was so much fun, wasn't it? I'm hearing all your voices and seeing all your faces, and I'm like, were we really only there for like 30 hours? I just can't even put into words what that experience was. But I'm Erin Rodgers. I'm a Royal Crown Diamond. I have a son who's supposed to be in bed who just over my doorway. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I've been with Young Living for about 7.5 years. And we are currently living in a house, packing it up, getting ready to move into an RV on 85 acres. And then I'm going to have Jodi on speed dial for all my farm questions. So that's kind of where we're at. And this was such a fun opportunity to get to be a part of this trip. And I've lost track of how many farms I've visited over the last few years. And every visit is just such a great, unique opportunity. So I'm excited to talk about it tonight with y'all.
All right. And Jodi is going to love answering your questions about farms. I have no doubt. That's like her favorite thing to talk about. So next, we're going to Danette.
Hi, friends. How are you today? I am super excited to be here. So thank you, Brian, for hosting, doing a phenomenal job. Like, I think you should take a job as hosting things. So we had a fantastic time. I've been with Young Living for 18.5 years. And so I've been to a few farms, as you can imagine, traveled the world with Gary. And it is always my pleasure to be around some of our incredible, incredible leaders. And so I am in Idaho still, in Donnelly, Idaho, population 110. And so my internet, so I'm not able to type in the chat, but know that I love you guys. And I'm here to, I get to see them pop up. But you guys, that Jodi and Brian have put this together for us all to have this farm tour is fantastic, because we had so many things that we want to share with you, and this is the perfect way to do that. So it's my honor to be with these great leaders and each one of you. So thank you for coming tonight.
All right. Thank you. So thanks for praising me as a host, but you haven't experienced me having to cut you off because of time yet. So you might regret that later on. They all have so much to say about their farm experience, but we want to try and get this in within an hour. So at times I may be rushing things along a little bit, and I apologize in advance if I do that, but it's only because we want to make sure that we get the full breadth of this, because we could go super deep on any one point of this, but we want to make sure that you get the full overview and the full experience of what being at a farm is really like. But the first question I have, and this is going to go to Kara, is I want to know, tell us a little bit about how this trip came together. What was it
now, Bob,
about this?
My little...
Hi, you're muted again, Brian.
Yeah, Jodi muted all, I think, and so she muted me. All right, so tell us about how the trip came together. What was it that prompted this, and how did it all come together?
Yeah, well, it was all thanks to Kimmy and Richard Brooke. So they had some inspiration to pull us all together and kind of reinvigorate all of us. It has been a while, and since we have had an in-person Young Living event, it's been a while since any of us have been able to visit any of the farms. And with everyone starting back up, going to retreats and things like that, Kimmy and Richard decided to pull together a group of diamonds who were on fire for Young Living and shared a similar mindset and excitement for what we were doing here and really moving forward Gary's legacy. And they pulled us all together and brought us to the farm for a couple days of just pouring into each other, creating some great tools for Young Living as a team to use. So Team Young Living, this isn't just for our teams, but for all of Young Living to use. And I really think they did a good job with it. It was a great group of people, an awesome experience, and we have some amazing video that's going to be coming out for everyone in Young Living to take a look at and use moving forward.
Awesome. So this is not your first farm that you've been to, right? You've experienced other Young Living farms. So with this farm and with other farms, why is it so important to travel to a Young Living farm? I mean, like, why can't we just look at a fancy brochure or attend a Zoom where everybody's talking about it? Why is it so important to experience a Young Living farm?
You feel the energy of everything that Gary poured into this company, his vision, his heart, his vision of purpose over profit. You know, everything he made for us to use. Every product he made and crafted and created and had a vision for was all about serving a purpose. And everything that you see at the farm emulates that. You know, that connection to the earth, seed to seal, the sustainability, the hearts of the people who work on the farm. It just completely reflects Gary's heart, his legacy, his vision for what we're doing with this company, because this company is way more than just some products that we're all out there trying to connect people to. It is a company of service and integrity and just this big purpose for wellness and abundance for everyone who chooses to take part in it. And you just feel that from the farms. You get your hands dirty, you get in the thick of it, you're able to truly see that it's not just some marketing lines or some fancy advertising. There truly is something special going on with Young Living essential oils.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned the people too. And like, I mean, Gary and his vision is so pivotal to the company, and the people that he hired, right, and put at a lot of these farms are still there and are still carrying on his vision. So I'm going to open this up for all of the people that were at the farm last week. Tell us, does somebody have just one story that stands out to you about an employee, that somebody that works at the farm that you just like to share about a little bit about their story in like 2 minutes to give us kind of an example of that, about how the people are such a powerful part of the Young Living farms? And I thought you'd all jump in on that all at the same time.
I definitely have one, Brian, because there was this gal named Emily who works at the farm, and she really kind of blew our minds away because we thought for sure she had to be, you know, like in her 20s. Come to find out, she was actually, she's actually 18 years old. And we are echoing a little bit. Brian, can you mute? So she is actually 18 years old. She's worked at the farm for 3 years. And she talked about how working at the farm has literally changed her life and has made such an impact. And this girl now is running the tours. She does the landscaping. She takes care of like the retreat center. Like she does everything. And she commands the whole respect of every single worker on that farm, every single employee there on that farm. And just getting to know her and hear her story from childhood until now, she is a transformed young woman by just being there. And knowing too that we're partnering with a company that impacts people's lives like this, like, to me, it was just, that was phenomenal hearing her story and what Young Living had done.
Okay. So awesome to hear those stories of people and so many people, not just the people using the products, but the people working for the company that have just seen so much transformation and life change as a result of this company. So that is phenomenal. So we're going to be talking tonight about giving you a tour of the farm in terms of looking at every step of what we call the seed to seal process. So the seed to seal process is all about how from the time that the seed is taken from a plant until that is grown and distilled and tested and then sealed in the bottle and shipped to you at your home, that every step of that process has a tremendous amount of care that goes into it. And so we're going to be walking through each one of those steps. And the first step in that process, of course, is the seed. So Wendy, I'm going to go to you. I want you to tell us a little bit about everything that goes into that step one of seed to seal process when we talk about harvesting and selecting seeds and what goes into the greenhouses and everything else related to the seed.
Okay. Well, I feel like the purity, the integrity of Young Living is found and embodied in the seed to seal promise. And that starts with the seed. The entire process, the operation, everything starts with that seed. They are real. They are absolutely genuine. There's no synthetic anything. And they are handpicked from just think about that. They are handpicked from the strongest botanicals in the field. And the seeds that have been selected, survival of the fittest, have the best bioactive compounds to produce the best quality essential oil and essential oil infused products for us to use. Everything is completely deliberate when it comes to Young Living.
Okay. And we have a garden, and so we basically just buy our seeds, right, from some catalog that Jodi orders it from. Not the case there, right? They're harvesting their own seeds. You can't just buy those seeds from a catalog. But also tell me a bit about the scope, like what always impresses me at Young Living Farms is how big things are. Like we start our seeds like on a little rack in our laundry room and grow those over the winter to get the seed starters. What kind of process does it go through, and how big of a facility is it where they actually start these seeds and grow them, the little seedlings to plant out in the fields?
Well, Brian, it looks like what you do at home, just on a much larger scale. I think people might be shocked, and maybe because I'm not a farmer, you expect this grand operation from this $2 billion a year company, but it's just a big greenhouse. It's a big greenhouse just like we might have in our backyard. So these seeds are planted in the little carriers that you get your plants, from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. They are baby. All the magic happens in the greenhouse. They are baby. They are nurtured. They are loved on and carefully monitored until they can be transferred by hand into the field with love. And that is it in essence. I mean, it's such a simple concept, but it's very complicated in the fact that there's so much love and so much nurturing that goes on to produce the best quality for us.
Awesome. All right. Next, I want to talk about the cultivation. That's the next step. And there's a whole lot that goes into this. So Danette, tell us a little bit more about the whole cultivation process, especially starting out. What goes into growing and maintaining the plants once they get transferred into the field? What is it like to weed and water and fertilize, all that kind of stuff when you're talking about plants at this scale?
Yes, at this scale, that's such a great thing, because in our little garden, we do, a little bit, and then you get out on a farm we have 200 acres on our St. Mary's farm. Of course, 2,200 acres in Ecuador. So when you start looking at farming at this level, it is very cheap and quick, right, to throw chemicals on there. For chemicals for fertilizer, chemicals for weeding, right, as herbicides, chemicals for insects, right, as insecticides. So all of those things are cheap to do. Not cheap to do when it is all physical human labor, right? So when people ask, well, what's the difference between a $6 bottle of lavender oil and a $25 bottle of lavender oil? I'm like, everything. So my first time at St. Mary's was in 2004, 17 years this month. My mom and I went up to St. Mary's, slept in tents because that's all that was available. They didn't have any kind of anything, kitchen, anything like that, any buildings. And so we were there, and let me tell you, an hour into that week, I'm thinking, we don't pay enough for our oil. You bend over those plants for just a little bit of time and your back says, yeah, I'll pay whatever it takes. So that is one reason I believe that Gary wants every one of you, every one of us to go and experience what it really takes, what seed to seal really means. One thing I loved is that we got to meet, I think there were 7 or so workers that come, six, and then a foreman, I believe, that come up from Mexico 6 months for the year, and they leave their families for those 6 months. They actually live above the machine shop across from the distillery, and they work 14 to 16 hours a day, weeding, planting, hoeing, whatever needs to be done is what they do. So we were serving them all dinner one night. They came in about 2 hours after we had eaten. And so I was worried we didn't have enough food. I was gathering extra food to feed them. And so I went and asked Cody, the farm manager, I'm like, we were outside, harvesting the Melissa and distilling it and everything. Where were these guys? I didn't see them at all. He said, oh, they were on the back field of lavender, weeding in between all of the lavender seedlings for 16 hours that day. They all walked through that line, getting their food, big old smiles on their face, so much gratitude. And I was like, holy smokes. I mean, they do this 6 days a week for 6 months without seeing their family. So Gary was always so keen on making sure that anybody working in a field had a good energy, positive attitude. And so having people there, foremen that totally understand that, because our frequency, you know, when you walk into a room and you feel the tension, that negative frequency, same thing. The plants take that on, man. So you got to walk in that field to be happy and have a good attitude in that time. So when you get your unmarked bottle of Melissa oil like we did, you want to make sure that everything is good in here, right? So we are hand weeding. We are, when needed, putting different things on the plants, like actually some of our oils. And we're actually growing what they call cover crops in between the fields, right? In between the rows. So I asked them, like in Mona, Utah, we use sheep, right? So we have a sheep herder that brings his sheep. Sheep do not like lavender, but they like everything, all the weeds that grow in between lavender. So we use sheep to weed in Mona. And I said, well, don't you guys have some sheep? And he said, well, in Mona, they don't have bears, they don't have cougars, they don't have wolves, and we have all those up here. And so we don't know quite how to have all of the sheep up here without like building full pens and all. So it takes an amazing amount of work to do that. So once you actually harvest, they've checked the Brix, which is the sugar, the glucose level in the plant before they harvest it. And once that is ready, then we harvest. And then depending on those Brix, we'll actually lay the plant material, in this case, Melissa, on the deck, all of the cement that is at the distillery for a certain amounts of time. And all of a sudden we were going to get some rain that day. And so they were like, okay, we wanted it to lay there for 2 hours, but it can't get wet. So they had a skid steer and us getting all of the Melissa underneath and starting to pack the cookers. So every single thing, it's an art and a science, as Brett Packer, our global farms director, will tell you, but it's more of an art, as Gary used to teach him. So I love that all of our guys that run there at St. Mary's and all of our farms were actually trained by Gary, and they have huge hearts and knowledge to know what to do in the fields and in the distillery.
And I feel like you talked about these guys that are weeding for 16 hours a day. Can you tell me, do they get like an unlimited supply of Cool Azul to use? Like, I feel like that should be just an automatic perk of putting in that kind of labor to those fields.
I think so too. As we were driving through other farms in the area, I was thinking, man, if I had to go work on a farm 16 hours a day, I would sure want it to be St. Mary's. So we actually have some of the Mexican documented workers that come up. They actually, some of them will be there 14, 15 years that the same workers have come up. So I think that says a lot to how we treat them and the benefits that we offer. So Young Living always takes care of them. So like Jodi was talking about, Emily there, she's like, you know, this job like saved my life. Like, this is what it's about. And that was what Gary was about.
That's pretty awesome. And Gary was also about big farm equipment too, right? Not to belittle people, but he loved big tractors. So even though they have to hand weed, there's a lot of big equipment involved in the actual harvesting, right? So tell us about, you guys actually got to be there and actually provide some of the labor while they were using the big equipment to harvest. So tell us a little bit about the actual process of harvesting.
We did, yeah. And actually they built, Gary built, he actually, the lavender harvester he brought over from France. Before that, it was hand tying up and snipping at the bottom. That's how they harvested the first lavender fields way back 93, 94, before the French harvester came. But Gary and Eldon could fix anything. So they have Franco, who's a great machine gentleman. He's been with us 5-6 years, was trained by Gary and can fix anything. So they actually created the Melissa harvester so that it has a conveyor belt, so it never touches the ground after it's harvested, that it is gently moved up and then into the truck, the trailer that comes behind it. So it is all so carefully made so that it is just right before it actually gets into the cooker, right? So every single piece of the puzzle is incredibly honed and created. If that doesn't, there's no Melissa harvesters on the market. Like, you're not looking up on, Facebook, whatever they call it, some kind of Craigslist thing. Yes, thank you. For a Melissa harvester, like, doesn't exist. So you create it, and Gary was awesome at doing that and passed on that knowledge, right? So we have the great opportunity to be able to be in there and experience it. And again, Gary wanted us all to do that. So we want you guys to go and experience harvest somewhere, sometime, wherever you can do that. And you will never look at a bottle of oil again without a major, because I'm slathered in gratitude tonight.
Awesome. All right. So once it's harvested, it gets onto that tractor, and you talked about how it was brought over to the distillery. And so now it goes into the cookers. And so Lori, tell us about the distillation process and what goes into that. And from the time that plant material comes to the distiller, what goes through next.
So thank you. This is my passion. And so I'm tickled to be able to address this, but I will warn you in advance that I'm not a detailed person. And so I did not pay attention to how big the distillers are. So if anybody knows that information, you can pop that in there. I didn't pay attention to all of the equipment that it takes to do it, but I can tell you that it was blowing my mind. So I'm standing there. First, we load the cookers. Well, let me back up. First, they unload the truck, like a dump truck full of manure. If you've ever lived on a farm, that's how it looks coming out, except that it's gorgeous and beautiful because it's Melissa. And then they take this great big, and they grab it like Jaws, right? And they pick it up. Oh, good. Screen sharing. There we go.
There you go. I don't know the dimensions of it, but that at least gives everybody a concept of how big that is, right?
And I will say that these are larger cookers than anybody else had. I've heard Gary speak on a number of occasions, and at one time he sort of chuckled at the notion that somebody was making a great big cooker because it was probably, a third of the size of our normal cookers. So anyway, then they lay it out on the concrete, and then we all got the pitchforks, and we would use our pitchforks and make sure that it was all spread out, much like mucking out stalls, if you've ever done that. Only, again, way more fun than mucking out the stalls. And so then they would leave it for, I think they said 2 hours, and we all went to go eat, but they did not eat. And when 2 hours came, they were there going, hey, y'all, time to drop the meal and go load the cooker. So then they loaded the cooker, and we all jumped in there to mash it down. And it's really important to get the mashing, for lack of a technical term, just right, because otherwise they said the steam finds the path of least resistance. And if you don't get it pushed down exactly right, then it will find the path of least resistance, and then you don't get the quality oil and you don't get the amount of oil. So the reason that distillation is my passion is because when I've heard Gary talk, he would drop little hints like the problem happens at the distilleries. The adulteration happens at the distilleries. The monkey business happens at the distilleries. Because he is the one who's the father of modern day distillation. He is the one who surpassed his teachers who were in France about how to do this precisely right, to get just the right constituents out of it. And it's complex. I have stood and listened to distillers at Young Living speak for over an hour about the different temperatures and how when the steam breaks into the neck, then you've got to know to do this and how important it is to do that. And all of these amazing random details that I could not even remember to tell you. And the one thing I came away with was, this is complex stuff. And I am so happy and grateful that everybody who runs a cooker at Young Living has been personally trained by Gary. because there is so much there to be had. So anyway, so that picture that you had, they mash it all down, or we mash it all down, and then they put the cone top on it. And I believe that Gary was the one who developed that too. And then it comes out the top and it goes down, and then it goes down into what you would think of as a basement. And that's where the great big vats are that collect the floral water and the oil. And what it looks like is it's probably about this is tall. Here we go. Somebody's got pictures. There it is. It's going down into the basement. And then it never touches anything but stainless steel. So again, that was Gary. And Danette was telling us stories about how the standard in the industry is not stainless steel. The standard is, now why can't I come, aluminum. But to Gary, that was unthinkable, that any of our oils would gather up any molecules of anything along the way, except what is supposed to be in there. Now, when you distill properly, you get all of the constituents that are meant to be in that plant, in that oil. When you don't have 30 years of experience distilling, what you get is maybe the top 2 or 3 constituents. And I tell you what, it's not as safe because it's those trace constituents that buffer the ones that are most present, and it's not effective. So even companies that claim that they are organic, even the ones that aren't using the pesticides, even the ones that are trying to do a good job, and I allow for that. There are some people trying to do a good job out there. They don't have the techniques. And so they probably get an oil that looks like lavender and smells like lavender, but is not going to work like our bottle of lavender or Name Your Oil. And that's why it's just so important. The distillation is the magic. In fact, we asked the men, now I'll tell you, at the top of this great big giant vat of floral water, and it looks like, when it's happening, it looks like a lava lamp. You see little bubbles coming up, okay? And that's the oil, because the oil floats on the top. So oh, my stars, I hit the wrong button. So what you have is this much floral water, and at the top, you have that much oil. And again, next time somebody complains to me about the price of this oil, I am going to say, do you have any idea what it takes to create that oil? It's nothing short of spectacular. And I could think of other words like miracle and all of that, but it really, truly is amazing what goes into a Young Living oil. And I'm going to leave you with this. The look on the farmers' faces and in their eyes when that came through, it was such a moment. It was deep satisfaction that you could read all over their faces as they spoke about the oil, and they spoke about Gary, and they spoke about what the farms mean to them. You can't even describe it. You just have to visit one day. So that's what I've got for distillation. I might know more if you ask me specific questions, but
Yeah. So the follow-up question, tell me about the actual ratios. You mentioned how there's just this tiny little bit of oil, Melissa oil, sitting on top of the floral water. Any idea how much? I know it's different for every crop. Any idea for Melissa what the ratio of oil to like acreage of Melissa is or anything?
Oh, no, but I think they said that in an entire year they might get, what did they say, 5.7 gallons, 500.
5 gallons.
70 out of the entire year.
Brett did make a
five
point.
gallons of Melissa.
Brett did make a point as he was giving the tour. He said that the crop of Melissa that we put into the cooker would perform like, I mean, it was really, when we didn't see the complete end of it, or at least I didn't stay down there that long, but like an inch or an inch and a half maybe of oil. And he said altogether that crop itself would that one that we put in, which was one and almost a second full cooker, would be about 0.7 or 0.8 liters. Wasn't that what it was? 0.7 or 0.8. Is that right?
Yeah. And that was out of 3.5, almost 4 acres.
Yes.
Of plants.
And he said to compare one cooker or one crop of like balsam fir, which is just up the road at the Highlands Flats farm, would do like 50 liters of oil or something crazy, like just that one amount. So just proportionally to think about like 0.7 to 50 from a similar sized cooker, that's where you start to get into some of the price differences and why it takes so much more to create that little bit of Melissa.
Exactly. He said he had a love-hate relationship with Melissa. He loves it, but it feels like there ought to just be more in there. And we did ask him, now, how is it that some companies are getting away with selling $25 bottles of Melissa? And he said, oh, well, that's easy. They sell the floral water, or they cut it or dilute it with something like alcohol. So just going to leave that there.
All right. Very cool. Excellent to hear that. And good. I'm glad we got to see these couple photos of that. Those distillers, if you haven't seen one in person, you really just can't fathom how big they are. Even the picture I showed of everybody standing in the one, that's really just the top of it. It goes down below the ground there. So it looked like it only stuck up like 3 or 4 feet above the deck. But then you're seeing that other picture I showed shows how it goes, I think it's probably another 6 or 7 feet. They're probably 10 feet tall altogether. They're just enormous, and all that plant material, and you get that inch to inch and a half of oil. So amazing. All right. The next step in seed to seal is, of course, the testing. After it's distilled, we've got to test it and know what it is. So Erin, tell us a little bit about the testing process that oils go through with Young Living.
All right. I'm excited to talk about this because I think it's something that people ask about a lot. And maybe don't know all the specifics or don't know even how to answer some of these questions. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the testing process, and then I'm just going to go ahead and be really bold with you and say that I get some really direct questions, and you probably have too, and kind of let you know how I feel about them. So first of all, we test our oils in-house. They do not currently have a GCMS at this farm. So they do bottle that oil and send it to the main testing facility, which happens either at the corporate office or at the distribution center, which is in Spanish Fork.
Can I pause you for 1 second there? GCMS. Tell us what a GCMS is.
It's no, I refuse.
Okay.
Do you know, Brian? I don't know. I feel like I could have answered that question if you hadn't just asked me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just to make sure that everybody understands, it's gas chromatography mass spectrometry.
I had glass stuck in my head, and I was like, that's not right. And I couldn't get any further through it from there. So GCMS is just one of like 8 different tests that we do in-house on our oils. So typically oils are brought to either the distribution center at Spanish Fork or to the main office. The main office tends to do more like we're trying a new thing and we want to test and see what happens, versus the distribution center, which has a huge testing facility there. I will tell you, and I will make this available to all of the other diamonds on the call. My husband was in Utah 2 weeks ago, and he got a private tour of the D. Gary Young testing facility with Richard Carlson. And so they actually were like in the testing facility, and he walked them through all of the different machines that they keep in there and all of the testing process. And I got a video. So I will make sure I got to find it. It's probably like on his phone or something. So give me a hot second and I will find it for y'all. But I will get that because it's always fun just to see what that whole process is, because it's way more in depth than anyone possibly thinks it is. And so what they're doing is they're actually, they're testing our oil. So we also do a third-party test. So everything that we do in-house, we confirm third-party just to make sure that we're seeing the same things. But quite frankly, we're going to catch it in-house and we're not going to use it if it's not testing properly. So one of the things that they're looking at specifically with the GCMS is if you were to look at, they can print out the GCMS results. It's like this gigantic poster board. I have a really great picture of this from the Highland Flats farm. I'll have to try to find, and I can share with you guys along with the write-up that I did on it initially when I was at Winter Harvest a couple of years ago. But it's this huge thing. And so if they print it out for you to be able to see the specs on it, they're just zooming in digitally on their screens and looking at it, but it is massive, like looks like a science fair project. It's this huge board, and it's got all these lines. Some line, it looks like a EKG gone wrong, right? Like it's like lines up, and then it's like lines down, and then there's another spike, and they're looking at all these different chemical profiles to see which constituents are high, which ones are low, and they know what it's supposed to look like. And so I remember years ago learning that the GCMS and a lot of these other machines that do similar things, when you buy this particular machine from a company, it comes embedded with standards. Like this is the standard for this. You can actually purchase plants. You can purchase like cosmetic chemical ingredients. You can purchase a number of different things as the kind of like the hard drive that fits into your machine for you to compare against. And so a lot of companies do that. You know, they're like, this is what the lavender should look like. Let's compare to the lavender. This is what the lemon should look like. Let's compare the lemon. Young Living doesn't do that. We actually have I used to have the numbers on this, but we have a database of plants that goes back as long as we've been around, and we have these tests back around 30 years. And so when we look for lavender and we look for specific constituents and specific things that we want to have present in our lavender, we are not comparing against this like market test. We're comparing against 30 years of our own plants and knowing exactly what Gary was initially looking for in these particular plants. So when you have somebody come at you and they're like, okay, well, that's great. If they have all of this, why don't they share it? Have y'all ever heard this question? Anybody heard this before? True disclosure, like you should share all the details, blah, 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 whatever. Like you can tell how I feel about that. Here's the deal. This is what I was told literally from one of the testers, from one of the scientists at the Highland Flats farm where they do a lot of test fields and things. And he said, the last thing you should ever do is buy essential oils from a company that distributes this information publicly, because every one of these constituents can absolutely be altered and remanufactured in a lab. And the second someone shows you the blueprint of what they will accept from a farm, they open themselves up for the likelihood for that plant to be altered in some way chemically in a lab to be made to look like that. So there's a reason why you don't, a bank doesn't put their floor plan and all of their security cameras and all of that is not uploaded online. You wouldn't say that they're not being transparent about their ability to keep your stuff secure. You don't want that information out there because that shows someone how to take advantage of what you have. And it's the same idea for our plants. Somebody sharing that information publicly would just open us up for people to actually create adulterated versions of our oils or to try to compete with us in a way that would be lab created versus God and plant created. And we just don't want to play that game. And so the beauty of the testing that Young Living does is that we know what we are looking for. And that's all there is to it. We know what we want on each of these machines. We test for all the heavy metals and we test for glyphosates and we test for all of the pesticides, but that's the least of our concerns. We know our plants are grown clean. We're not worried about that. We're looking for specific constituents because it's not just about bottling a plant as much as it is about creating something that's going to have the maximum health benefit for each one of us who are using those plants. So if anybody ever asks you why we don't publicize all of that, stand firm on that. That is what makes our oils the best in the industry. So that's my thoughts on testing.
They're well said. That is really good. And I love the analogy to a security risk, right? Why would you share that information and let somebody else copy it? So that is awesome. Really well said. And I could talk forever about the whole testing because I love the science of it. Jodi's shaking her head like, yes, I geek out over that stuff. So very cool. That is a great way of sharing it. Thank you. So the next step and the last step in the seed to seal is the seal, of course. And so Anna, tell us a little bit about the process of sealing it. First, we're going to back up a little bit before they test it, because once it comes out of that, once it goes into the container that has the floor water and the oil sitting on top, they've got to do some more process with it. So tell us a little bit about that next step of filtering the oil and then about bottling it from there.
Sure. So if I may, I'll actually share my screen with you to share you some videos. Hold on. Can you see it there?
Yep. We got it.
Okay. So there's, can you hear my voice also?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're placing in that mason jar, we have the oil and the water, which is supposed to be mostly oil, but still there's a little bit of water in there. So there's a strainer with a coffee filter, and they put it inside that funnel in the top, and it'll start, I'm going to, hold on.
So I'm not sure we're
There's
seeing
my
the
voice in
video. We're
Spanish
seeing,
too. So
we're
as you
seeing-
can see at the bottom, there's oil and water at the bottom. And once everything drops, it'll, with time, it'll start dividing. Like you'll see clear water at the bottom, and then glucose, and then the oil at the top. And they'll open
Anna,
the
we're
little valve at
seeing-
the bottom
hey.
to let the water go down, like let the water go to the mason jar and put it in the hot tubs along with the other floral water. And then they'll do just the oil, which is what will be taken to testing and then bottling. So you can be sure that we get only oil. No water is in our bottles. It's only 100% essential oils in the water. I mean, in the bottles.
Okay, so I think we're only seeing like your files. The video, I don't know that actually came through. Is that like on a different screen, or because we're just seeing like your list of files?
Share a different screen, Anna. I think you've shared the file section and not the quick movie where it's playing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Let me see. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, that's it.
Okay,
Now we got it.
awesome.
All right, so one more
Sorry about
time,
that.
play that for us.
So there's a coffee filter at the top. And you'll start like separating. There'll be water at the bottom, which is very opaque at first because it's mixed with glucose, and then it'll just be water, then the glucose, and then the oil. And it'll be there for a couple of, I don't remember if it was just a few minutes or more than that. I think it was more like an hour or so until it's very obvious, the separation of it. So they open the valve, like I was saying, and they'll get the water out first and put it in the hot tubs with the rest of the floral water. And then just the oil will come out to be bottled after being tested. And you can see right there in the glucose how there's like little clear patches. That's the actual water that's going to start dividing.
All right, so tell us a little bit about what happens once it gets into that mason jar. Where does it go next from the mason jar?
So the water, like I said, will go to the, let me stop sharing, hold on. Okay, so just the water will go to the hot tubs first. As I said, the St. Mary's, the St. Mary's Farms, there's hot tubs for Melissa and lavender. And we actually got a chance to get in the hot tub, which is full of lavender water and Melissa water. It was the most amazing experience ever. I'm not sure if there is a hot tub in every single farm, but at least in this one, it was a great experience. And then the rest of the container, which is the oil, that's what we actually want. The water is fabulous, but that's not as amazing as the oil itself. The oil is what's sent to Mona for the testing that Erin was saying, and then it's bottled in Mona for it to be shipped home. So there's really, like, what I love is what Wendy was saying. Like, it's just as in home, but in a bigger scale. Like, there's no, like, the science is only for the testing, but there's no, like, big steps and mechanisms and let's add this or get rid of this other thing. No, it's just like water, oil, let's get rid of the water with a funnel, the coffee filter, pure, simple. Like, it really is, like they've always told us, a mom and pop shop that went big. Like, it's something super simple and pure that went ginormous.
Awesome. All right. So cool. And so that's the last step in the seed to seal. But now we want to talk, Yvonne, I'm going to go to you, and you need to bring it all home for us. Why does all this matter? What is so important about this seed to seal process? and the way that Young Living puts all this care into it. Why does all this matter to us?
Well, I think honestly, the last 50 minutes really shows us why it all matters. We always talk about, well, if you really understood how much goes into it, the oils wouldn't be expensive. We talk that, and it's easy to say. But when you go to a farm and you walk on the land and you talk to the people and you see firsthand what actually goes into getting our oils and watching that little bit of oil actually coming out the bottom of that colander, it becomes real. It's one thing to talk about, to hear about it, see pictures at convention up on the big screen, hear other people's stories. But when you get to, as a member of Young Living, when you get to go to the farm and put your hands in the ground and talk to the guys who are there every day in, day out. We get to go there and have a great time and laugh and joke around. But these guys are there every day, and you hear their passion and commitment to Young Living. I can't tell you how many times they thanked us. It was weird. It was really weird. They thanked us for coming. And we were like, oh my gosh, we are so grateful to you because you help us. Even though some of us have been with Young Living for a while, it still helps us see and understand and connect with the oils, that all the oils that we buy and have stashed all around our house, it's great and it's wonderful to have our aha moments. But when you go to the farm and you're part of that distillation process, that seed to seal process, it changes you. It changes you forever. It changes you to understand these oils do not cost a lot. The value of these oils is immeasurable. And Gary, it shows you, if nothing else, there's several great quotes by Gary, but one of my favorite is, if you don't know your soil, you don't know your oil. And it's just, it drives that home better than anything else, because we are the only company that does this. We are the only company that goes down to literally the microbes in the ground, that we're worried about that and making sure that the members of this company understand this and are part of it. I don't know how you could go to a farm and not be forever ever changed. And I'm going to bet there's a lot of nodding heads here right now.
That's so good. Yes, everybody's heads that I'm seeing are nodding right along with you, because that is so true. So true. So we have just a couple minutes left, and I am looking and realizing that we've had one more of our tour guides that was just able to join us late here. So the last question is going to go to Bethany Shipley, if she's able to unmute. And Bethany, what I'd love to know from you is, what do we do with this? Do we just say, well, that's really neat that the Young Living does all this, and we just go on about our business tomorrow and forget all about this? Is it just neat, or what do we do with this, all this information, this knowledge of how special these oils are?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I cannot wait to listen to the replay, because I'm going to learn so much. I feel like when you're at the farm, it's just, you can't even soak it all up. That's the crazy thing. There's so much information. The farm guide is talking over here and Emily's talking over here, and they're all saying such valuable things. You just want to have like 20 devices, like recording them all. But I'll tell you the lesson for me personally. What happened for me was, I had a rough day on Thursday morning, and that was the day that we were harvesting the Melissa. And we got in the back of the truck, and we're told to stomp the Melissa. I'm sure they told you to basically distress it, and that's going to bring the glucose levels up, and the oil's going to be harvested at a rich state. And so I remembered Gary training on Melissa oil, and he said that if Melissa is around negativity, then that Melissa oil is going to be tested actually incorrectly. It's not going to be within the Young Living standards. So they have a rule: no speaking negatively around the plant, no using foul language. They really take this responsibility of bringing your energy as a positive energy to the plant. And so here I had a rough morning. I was feeling some negative feelings, and then I'm like getting in the back of the Melissa, and also in the back of the head, I'm going, they have 10 acres of Melissa. They're going to harvest maybe 5 gallons of oil. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to mess this up. So I'm like, Bethany, you got to get yourself in check. You got to get your, like, not just like positive poly pants on, but like you actually have to be in love when you do this. And so I got in the back of the truck and I'm like, you know, I'm checking myself in a way that was like, I'm responsible for the energy I bring to this Melissa. Before I knew it, I was having the time of my life. I'm laughing, stomping the Melissa, getting so much energy out. And it really impacted me because I thought, what if I actually took that kind of responsibility about the energy that I bring every single day in every interaction? What if in my relationship with my kids, I took that kind of responsibility? In my relationship with my spouse, if I took that kind of responsibility? And it was so cool because I actually had a delayed flight, then a canceled flight. I was stuck in Denver for 36 hours. The entire time, I can honestly say, Melissa Oil taught me I am responsible for my energy. I am responsible for the way that I show up in the world. And I'm supposed to give to whoever and whatever I'm around. Guys, that if you're on here and you're building a business with Young Living, you can send copy paste messages. You can do all the things that like numbers are going to like get you to where, yeah, eventually it's a numbers game, right? But if you want to actually make an impact in this world, in this life, where after this life, it's eternal what you've done. The way to do that is to take responsibility for your energy like you would around the Melissa and actually be a trajectory changer for people. When they interact with you, their life is better for it. Their life is richer for it. They are added value for it. And I think Melissa Oil, it's funny because I wasn't expecting to learn that, but it was just such a reminder for me. So here is your charge for the week ahead. Take responsibility for your energy when you walk inside your home, when you walk outside your home, when you walk into the grocery store. If your energy is of love and it's truly to be a trajectory changer, selling a bottle of lavender is going to come next. Selling a bottle of Progestins Plus is going to come next after you've empathized with the people. But that energy of love is really the charge. And what I want to do in this world and in my life is leave a legacy, just like Gary did. You know, a legacy of, it doesn't have to be conventional. It doesn't have to be easy. It doesn't have to be actually convenient at all, but it can be absolutely magical. And so that was my lesson for the week from the farm. And that's my charge to you as well.
Wow. That's awesome. And what a way to end it. I bet a lot of you wish that you had that recorded. In fact, I bet you wish you had all this recorded. The good news is that we do. We have a recording of it. We will be sharing this with you because we would love for you to send this out to people that you know, people that are on your team, people that you have been trying to talk to about Young Living and about how special it is. We would love for you to be able to use this as a tool to show people how amazing the products are, how amazing the company is, and how amazing the people are behind Young Living. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Give a big Zoom round of applause for all of our tour guides tonight. They did an amazing job of helping us to experience what it's like to be at a Young Living farm. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you later.